the first question I raise is corruption in higher judiciary real or exaggerated? Why don't you start, Justice Banerjee, since you've seen it from the inside as a High Court Chief Justice? Is corruption in the higher judiciary real or exaggerated? There are those who have said at least 50% of our judges have something to answer for.
The judiciary is not outside the society. So if there is some element of corruption in society, that is reflected in the judiciary also. I don't think it's 50%. I don't even think it's close to 20%. But I won't be able to give you a figure. But that there is corruption in the judiciary, in the higher judiciary, is beyond question. No one should live in a fool's paradise and say that there's no corruption in the judiciary.
I want to understand when you say there is no corruption in the judiciary, says Justice Banerjee. Colin Gonsalves, as someone who's claimed that there is widespread corruption, can we quantify it? Is it fair at all to quantify and say there are a number of judges who are corrupt? We've seen what happens when we paint everyone with a broad brush. How would you respond to those who say we are unfair to the judges when we say judicial corruption is widespread?
Well, Rajdeep, when I came into the Supreme Court in the year 2000, we would hardly hear people talking among themselves, lawyers, talking about this judge being corrupt or that judge being corrupt. And now when I listen to some of our very young colleagues, entrants at the bar, who are obviously repeating things that their seniors have discussed in their chambers, I don't understand, and it horrifies me, it frightens me, to see how they are talking openly about widespread corruption right across the country. It's frightening. Now, if you look at corruption in terms of giving cash, I don't know. I wouldn't hazard a guess as to, 50%, 40%. But there's a bigger corruption. And that is the corruption of closeness to the government, where a politician phones a judge. A politician phones a judge hearing a case and says, in this case, do this, do that, do this, do that.
No, 1 minute. Are you telling, are you telling me that politicians are ringing up judges because is this based on gossip, speculation? Where is the evidence that a judge has been rung up by a politician? You see, that's the problem. How much of this is real? How much of it is exaggerated?
There's no evidence at all. And there will never be evidence forthcoming because there's no system for catching corruption in the judiciary.
So on what basis do you say politicians are, on what basis did you say on the show, sir, with due regard, on what basis did you say judges are being rung up by politicians and that's the real corruption?
Yeah, that I'm saying it purely on the basis of discussion that takes place in legal circles. People are talking about it openly. Like I told you, there's no other evidence. But talk by even senior lawyers and others in the corridors of the Supreme Court and the High Courts is, to me, by itself, a very frightening development, a very worrying development for the integrity of the judicial system.
Let me take that then to you, Satyapal Jain, because you have been both a former MP, now you're Additional Solicitor General. I want to get it clear from you. Here is Colin Gonsalves saying the talk in the corridors of judiciary, whether it's in lower courts, higher courts, is that judges could be contacted by politicians. Yes, there could be judicial corruption. There could be fixers out there. How do you see it? Is it real or exaggerated? Have the chickens come home to roost?
I don't agree with him that the corruption or political interference is to that extent. Of course, incidents, reports are increasing now. I joined the profession in January 1980, and during last 45 years I have seen the numbers of cases of corruption, etc. they are increasing. But let's not forget that it is the judiciary which one single judge of the Allahabad High Court could dare to set aside the election of the sitting Prime Minister of India.
So that was 1975. That was 1975. We are in 2025. You are admitting as an ASG, albeit in your personal capacity, that since you became a lawyer in 1980 compared to today, number of cases where judges are being accused of corruption have increased. Do you concede that?
let's not forget, those cases all put together also, out of 1100 High Court judges, the incidents are 8, 10 or 12. Rumors are there, everywhere it can be, anybody can say I did this and that. And I feel 95, 98% judges are honest. Supreme Court, High Court also. It is few people who have entered here by one reason or the other who are causing this type of, what should I use, shameless actions, bringing the whole judiciary into the...
Do you agree with Colin Gonsalves when he says that there are reports that politicians ring up judges to fix cases?
Not to my knowledge, I have not ever heard of it. If he has any evidence, I think one thing we should also learn now. If we have any specific instance, why should keep it to ourselves, report to the Chief Justice, report to the people concerned, so that the matter can be investigated. Simply saying any person will not make any difference.
Okay, Gopal Shankar Narayanan, we are getting two clear views. One suggesting that this could be the tip of the iceberg, that what has been hinted about in judicial corridors is now coming to the surface. The other, which is that 97, 98% of judges are honest. A few rotten eggs should not reduce public confidence in the judiciary. Where do you stand? Is the corruption real or exaggerated?
Look, I would defer to a large degree with the person who has been closest to the system from the inside, which in my view is Justice Banerjee. I echo his sentiments entirely. I believe that much like we lawyers would know the truth about lawyers at the bar, judges would know the truth about judges, because there's very little interaction that happens between the bar and the bench, at least openly. There's very little that happens except on some official functions and things like that. I believe that the level of corruption, which is financial corruption, is insignificant, if almost as close to 1%, if at all, from what I have seen. And we are all regular practitioners in the courts. Corridor gossip is virtually unsparing about judges primarily, because they are the ones who decide the fates of our cases, etc. You know when there are whispers about certain judges, etc. For example, as far as Yashwant Varma is concerned, I have never ever heard anything negative about him, integrity-wise, ability-wise, competence-wise, at all. So I would go out on a limb and say, in my view, Yashwant Varma is absolutely clean. That's my view.
You're making a huge, you're claiming Yashwant Varma in your view is absolutely clean, which
Yes,
will then bring me,
that is my view.
which will then bring me, what was the cash doing? Are you then suggesting right at the very outset of this debate that this could be a giant setup?
Which will then bring me to, where did you find the cash? Because nobody did.
The Supreme Court, sir, the Supreme Court itself has released the video of the burnt cash.
That video is the only thing anybody has, which was forwarded from the Commissioner of Police. But as far as I'm concerned, I have not seen any cash recovery. I have not seen it. Now, as lawyers, we are trained to be a little careful, because we present cases based on evidence. Let the evidence come, let the inquiry take place, let the responses be considered, let the timing, including the absence of the judge from his 1-acre residence where in an outhouse something was found, let all those things be considered. At the moment, I don't want to prejudge anything. I'm telling you my opinion based on the exact same corridor gossip which has made its way to Mr. Gonsalves as well. As far as we are concerned, the level of, to answer your question directly, the level of financial corruption is almost minimal. It's there, but it's almost minimal. The level of political orientation, a level of dishonesty that may come into judgments because of that, may be a little more.
Orgo Sengupta, as someone who's researched this subject deeply, where do you stand on it? Is the corruption real or exaggerated?
So I'm not privy to all the corridor gossip that the previous speakers are privy to. So I may be excused for my ignorance on that count. But I think you mentioned that this may be the tip of an iceberg. I think there is an iceberg, but I doubt very much that this particular example is the right tip. As you were saying, that we must wait for the inquiry committee to come out with its report, because at this point of time, this looks like a case that is, we should not jump to hasty conclusions. Having said that, why is there an iceberg? I think there are some facts that suggest that there is considerable amounts of corruption that exist in the judiciary. The closest we can get to evidence is we have cases such as the case of Justice Ramaswamy, which was an impeachment that almost went through. We have a case of Soumitra Sen, another impeachment where the judge resigned. Justice Paul Daniel Dinakaran, who was the Chief Justice of the Karnataka High Court, and clearly, according to the inquiry committee report by the judges, had encroached on land. So there are many cases where there are recorded facts that there is corruption that exists in the higher judiciary, not just among judges of the higher judiciary, but amongst chief justices, and also in one case, the judge of the Supreme Court. Of course, other than that, so that's at the level of evidence and the level of perception. I think the speakers before me have already said it, that there is a growing perception that that some judges are on fake, and everyone knows that this perception does exist, and I think it's a sad day for everybody that this perception has only been growing, and it is growing because proactive steps have not been taken, and the judiciary continues to remain under the view that if it kind of keeps, it's like an ostrich, if it keeps its eyes tucked in, that things will go away, but things don't go away. So I think this is really a wake-up call for the judiciary. There are rotten apples, and I think it's time to deal with those rotten apples with transparency and not brush it under the carpet, as the Chief Justice of India has to do in this case.